In 2019, specifically in April and May, it seems like everyone was talking about Game of Thrones. Why? It's rare to see a TV series reach the level of national popularity the way Game of Thrones did, to the point where it was almost impossible to not hear about it during April and May. You had news articles about it, you had memes on Twitter. I imagine a lot of confused newscasters had to scramble to find out who these 20 different characters are, what the heck a White Walker is, and how a show this difficult to follow could get so popular. And I think that's a really interesting question. Why did Game of Thrones get so popular when, in theory, it should only really appeal to a small niche group of people? And that's besides the acting and the music and the fight scenes. Obviously, people are fans of those. I'm talking about the show's writing and its plot. It can be a nightmare to keep up with sometimes, especially for the average viewer who isn't used to novel adaptations of this scale. And yet, the show's popularity never declined. It only grew, with the final season being the most popular by far. So, why did people love it so much? The best answer I could find is in episode 2 of season 8, the final season, which I think shows why everyone was talking about Game of Thrones. Now, on paper, this episode is one of the least important episodes in the series. The episode begins with all of the characters together in Winterfell and ends with all the characters together in Winterfell. Almost nothing happens the entire episode. And yet, it's one of the best reviewed episodes of the season. That's because the bulk of the episode consists of character interactions and character development. Not just any kind of character development, the kind that was uniquely designed to serve as payoff for longtime viewers of the show. One of the perfect examples of this is the interaction we see between Bran Stark and Jaime Lannister.
We were at war. Everything I did for my house and my family. I'd do it all again.
The things we do for love.
The last time these two characters were together was in the first episode of the series, where Jaime pushed him out of a window and crippled him for life. For context, that was 8 years ago. So not only do fans get to see how these two have grown and developed as characters, but they finally get payoff for a plotline that was set up 8 years ago. Among this, we have moments like Arya and Sandor Clegane properly reuniting, Theon returning to redeem himself after betraying the Starks, and Brienne finally being knighted like she deserves. All of these being moments that people have been waiting for multiple seasons now. The takeaway here is that people like it when the time they put into something is rewarded. It's a feeling we don't get to experience often in life, which makes it all the more satisfying when we do get it. Take the latest Avengers movie, for example. It's the 4th Avengers film, but is actually the 22nd Marvel movie, which means to fully enjoy Endgame as intended, you have to watch 22 movies released over the span of 10 years. It might sound like very few people would actually enjoy this, but people loved it, which is what led to Endgame becoming the top-grossing movie of all time. That's what we're seeing with Game of Thrones. By sticking around for so long, it almost becomes more than a show for a lot of people, which creates an atmosphere that's hard to match for any other show. And that's another thing this episode gets right: atmosphere. A lot of the scenes are very dimly lit. The characters, in a sense, are surrounded by darkness, analogous to the army of death that surrounds the castle they're staying in, as well as the ambiguity as to who is going to live or die in the coming battle. The audience is being kept in the dark just as much as the characters are. Another highlight of the episode is hearing the song Jenny of Old Stones, sung by Daniel Portman, who plays Podrick. It's also the song that plays during the credits, the latter being sung by Florence and the Machine. The lyrics, as one would expect, are based on the lore of the books. But in a lot of ways, these lyrics are also mimicking the audience's thoughts on the future of the show.
And she never wanted to leave. Never wanted to leave.
We've known these characters for 8 years now. We don't want any of them to leave, but we know based on episodes like The Red Wedding that we're probably going to lose a big chunk of these characters. Probably a few favorites as well. And yet, despite knowing that, I never regretted watching up to that point. That's what made this show so special. It wasn't just the huge battles and the great acting and the wonderful music. It was a show that treated its audience with respect and made it worth watching for its long runtime.
Jenny would dance with her ghost.
And then they made the rest of the season.